Mayrath Auger has an issue with the gearbox. So we're getting ready to tear it apart and put a new gearbox onto it. We're removing all the bolts off the top so we can lift this away, set up the side so we can get access to the bottom. And we just lifted the top section off and set it on the ground, so not too difficult. Now we have better access to get down inside. And also make sure you remove your shaft. And our gearbox is making a lot of noise. And I'll get in a little closer, and you can see it actually split the gearbox open here. And if you look closely, right there, it's cracked open. So we'll have to go inside, take that off, take these off.
Hey, do you want to come inside with us?
And looks like there's a set screw and a bolt, or those 1/2 inch. And then take these guys off. On ours, we had to cut that off. It was too rounded, so we had to cut it off with a grinder. And next you remove the 2 bolts from the inside, 3/4 inch sockets. You got one going this way and one going that way. We can't get this to come loose, so we'll cut it out. You can see we're putting a grinder in there. We'll cut it here, or the other thing, you can cut it back here if you had a Sawzall blade that's sharp. We unfortunately don't have a sharp saw blade, so and we ended up cutting it off because we couldn't get it. So not the best way of doing it, but that's the way it worked out for us. We went ahead and zipped these plates off. Let's see if that would help get it off of there. We had to end up heating that cherry red to get this apart, and use these big pry bars to pry that gearbox out of there. It is not an easy job. So now we're going to have to polish the old one up inside and fit everything. We're going to have to take a grinder and a flapper wheel. Go in there and clean it up good. And if you remember, we cut this piece off, and it was in there pretty good. We actually had to use put a piece of steel in there, and we had to actually use the press to press that piece out. We couldn't just tap it out. So, and we also had to separate that from the U-joint so we could press it out. After pressing this out, it's brought over for a test fit, and it drops right on. So there must have been a lot of rust in it that we had to press it out, or a slightly bigger fit on the old one, but it drops right on. All we did was clean the inside out a little bit, so that's good. And they didn't have any new gaskets, so we ended up making one. And so we just took a piece of rubber and cut a hole in it, and so we'll just slide that on when we go to put it together, and that will be our gasket. And we've got the gearbox, so it'll slide on, but you can't get it to go into that hole. So we're going to have to take the flightings and the shaft and slide that out that end a little bit, so we can slide the gearbox on and slide the flightings back onto the gearbox shaft once that is bolted up through the top. And to slide it forward, just need to take the end apart, and then you can slide it forward. And we took a pry bar in and we slid the flightings, the shaft ahead, and you have to take the other end loose. And I put the universal joint back in, and I took the shaft and I just took the caps and I just closed it up until it's ready to put the clips back in. And we got the little gearbox in position, lining the bolts up. They've got a little spacer in there, a big fat washer, and a nut. And you have to bring your carriage bolts in from the back side. And then go ahead and tighten them up, and then we'll put a little anti-seize lubricant on that shaft before we run the flightings down onto it, put the bolts in. And go ahead and we tighten all these bolts up, and we got just a little bit of space in there. Okay, we got our seal up top here.
What's wrong?
We have to slide this end in while those guys pry the other end in. We got our bolts down here in the bottom now. And I tightened them all up. They didn't quite slide on real easy, but we got them on there. And then we've got the shaft on the top and a set screw tightened. And all the bolts on the gearbox are ready to go. We got a handful of guys, and we lifted that up on there. Of course, we're working it dark because it's farm life. But we got the PTO shaft lined up, set screws in. And don't forget to put that bolt in your shaft and grease it and tighten that set screw. Tight. Tighten the bolts up on the top. We're going to put a PTO shaft in the center. We'll be ready to go here in a second. And as you can see, we got it going. We had some help from neighbors to set the top piece back on. Swing out there. And we got it running some drain right now. Everything's working good. Shaft back in. And filling up the semi. So that's a good sign right there.